from the beginning of time that human beings have been challenged with. It is simple though. Don't fight that. Work with it. Try to see how you could share in with the children, with the wife. Build relationships rather than destroy relationships. It is the number one challenge, but it's perhaps the most rewarding challenge that you share your children with your wife, you grow with your children with your wife. And of course, now children have to be mindful. One of the things that we did for many years was when the children grew up, and they brought their children to mommy and daddy. I think there has to be a cap on that. Once mommy and daddy, and I certainly experienced it with my own parents, and I love them dearly. But I was told, when you have your children, you take care of them, because I now have to go back to taking care of my husband. And I understand it fully to this day. Now, she said that, mind you, she still took care of the grandchildren, but the rule was set. I love my husband, and now I have to go back to being with my husband.
Well said. Sterling, changes as these lovely children come along. And
the first thing came to mind when you asked that question. I was in a setting with Elaine, and somebody was talking about, the ladies, they were talking about like how the kids used to keep them up at night when the babies came, the wife have to take turn, the husband have to take turn walking the floor with the baby. And I turned to Elaine and I said, Elaine, I said, we never had that problem, right? And she said to me, oh, go sit down, you slept through the whole thing. And the joy of it starts right there, It starts right there when the baby come, and the honeymoon is really over. The marriage is now it's settled in. The honeymoon is over, and you enter the family. And the family usually come, I say, on an average of a year and a half, 2 years after marriage. So you find that your life will change, and it changed rapidly with the babies. And the welcome, you really have to be a parent to appreciate the feeling of having a newborn, or in addition to the family. Our daughter Nivea, Nivea, every afternoon, Nivea used to have a crying spell when she was like around about 9 months. Nivea will just cry. All she's crying. We don't know what's wrong with her. And what we did? At that time, we was living through Twynham Avenue. And we used to put her in the car and take her to the beach. And once she get to the beach on Montague and the breeze blows, she go quiet. It seems like that's all she wanted. Now, I say that to say that simple little, what some people might classify as a disruption, that simple, whatever she needed, we had to make provisions for that. So in other words, our 5 o'clock, between 5 and 6 in the evening, is actually by the beach with Nivea, because that seems like that's what she required. She wanted maybe just feel the breeze, right? So as you advance into this with these kids, and because of the love for them and joy, then of course the basic needs kick in, like the schools and then once they get to school, then you got to be monitoring them with their homework. And with my girls, and I always say when I pick them up from school, the first thing I ask them before I say anything, once they settle in the car, it comes so natural to me. I say, anything daddy needs to know today? And of course, Chanel used to take the lead on it. No, daddy. That tells you, see, what you're doing, you're establishing a rapport where a rapport of trust and a pipeline where these kids can communicate with you on any level. So when I ask that question, I expect the honest and the truth. You see? So that goes through life. And to this day, I still will ask them anything I need to know. No, daddy. Now, one thing with these kids, although you ask that question, you establish that relationship, there can come a time when they'll say no, but guess what? A day later, they'll come to you, and my kids will say, guess what, daddy? Well, okay, you know what? Maybe this is the question. This is what I was trying to get at yesterday. You didn't give it to me. But on their terms, you have to be able to back away and give them that space. So when they can come back to you, and the day when you don't ask the question, they can give you that answer to the question you asked previously, because they're ready to talk. You see, and you have to establish that. Lastly, I'll say this. Right now, with the kids being married, I said, I said I focus on when they were a little small. There's an old saying, the tap of little feet through the house, right? That turns into loud voices, loud music in their rooms, and the door is closed. And then you know what? You know what the next stage is? The silence of them being gone. And I said the other night to Elaine, I said, Elaine, boy, isn't it something? He's had so much, is it be so much noise in here and so much talking, and all of now is the rooms are empty. It's just you and I. But guess what? That's where your maturity level comes in again. Life goes in stages. Through all the changing scenes of life, you're going to end up in that situation where, okay, let me make a phone call to my daughter and let me see how she's doing. And one of your most glorious moments is when she come and those grandkids hit that doorbell. That is, yeah, you live for that. You see?
So I'm hearing there's just many adjustments.
So I give you all, I just walked you through a whole, but of course, the young bachelor tonight, I'm giving you something that I'm giving you a mirror into your future. That young bachelor like CJ, I'm giving you this.
Yeah.
And I wish this for you, that you're going to be blessed. You see, it's a blessing. Okay. And of course, you're going to get the other side where, okay, we didn't make it. The marriage dissolved. You can get that. But I must say, one of the things, what I noticed too, I'm going to close on this. When I travel, sometimes I'll be, while some people are on their phones and stuff like that, I have my time with that too. But a lot of times I take time just to sit and watch people. And one time I said to myself, you know what? Marriage is alive and well. Just by watching the interaction of people, and especially the business that I was in. Sometimes I'll stand and just marvel at a couple, and I watch the family. I say, boy, the family is alive and well. You watch when people go on vacation. When families go on vacation, it tells you something about life. And that is something you can feel good about what you did. So don't feel bad about working 24 hours and 2 jobs. Don't feel bad about that. The idea is to provide for that family.
Uncle Bob, take a stab at that question. Children changing the scenes in marriage.
Well, children, you know that you're going to take second place once the child arrives. But if you think of a precious metal, they test it in the furnace, burn off the impurities. Certain things are put through stress tests just to check the integrity, to make sure the strength is what it should be. And I think children are a test, a stress test of sorts on a marriage. Because once the kids come, sometimes the wife may put all of her attention on them. And as a husband, you feel that they're not checking for you. And so you need to realize that it's a partnership. And I think that in terms of role, they're shared responsibilities. And so once the children come, if you share the responsibilities, the quicker you will be able to get back to some form of normality in the marriage relationship. I think what is also important here is we talked about creating that bond with family. And those times when you need me time with your spouse, that's when your family comes in, because you can drop the kids off. I know that my son and his wife now, they have a date night. Mm-hmm. And on that date night, the kids are going to be with some family member so that they have time to themselves. And so children are a blessing, but like I said, they can be a test. And there are some marriages that have not withstood the test of children coming into the union.
Andy, your thoughts on the matter? You have 2 kids.
Yes. I am not as fortunate as Bob and Sterling to have any grandchildren yet, but I have 2 kids, and kids, when they come into the marriage or come into the relationship, it does change things. Because before Anson came, right? My first one came, I was the center of attention. Right? When Anson came, he was the center of attention. When I quizzed Sonia about it, she says, well, you could do for yourself. He can't do nothing for himself yet. So, so the important thing is that you change because you're self-sufficient, then you could adapt and adjust. And this is one thing about marriage, family life. It is very fluid. Situations change on you. Things happen. Kids are a blessing. Kids, many families would die to have kids in their family. To hear this small feat, when they grow up to hear these giants of men and women, right? Pontificating of the values that you show them. So it is vital to understand that with kids comes adjustments, and how you handle these adjustments will determine how you successful or how cohesive or how much in harmony your relationship with your wife could be. Now, it is a difference trying to manage a healthy relationship, sometimes with young children, and sometimes, especially if the kids at some point in time are what we consider quote unquote cranky kids. Because then sometimes men do not handle it as well as the women does. So sometimes that could put a strain on marriages as well. But the thing about it is, once we realize that kids are a gift from God, we'll try to unwrap this gift as precious and as tender as possible. And we'll try to make the adjustments that are necessary so that we can have a good outcome with these kids, which are blessings from God.
We haven't touched it much tonight, but we got to get into that before I go into the questions from our viewing audience, because trust me, you guys have evoked a lot of responses to them. But I must ask this one before we get into their questions. Finances, money, 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 money. How important is it? Can the marriage survive without none?
Mhm.
How important is money? I will go in first, the finance guy. Tony, take it.
Phil, outside of Christian love, I don't know anything that is more essential to a marriage. I don't know. In fact, I would dare say to every aspect of human existence in free world, money is essential. So if you want to bury somebody, if you want to buy a candy, if you want to do anything, money is an integral part. And many relationships fail simply because the money is in trouble. I mentioned earlier about the bedroom being closed and the kitchen being closed and the love being turned off. If you were to sample most people whose marriages falter, you'll find out that it had its basis in at least 70% of them because money. However, money is not the only ingredient, but we're talking about money right now. Because, and I got to take my hats off to any number of my close friends, and I say it to them all the time, who may have financial challenges. You have a wonderful wife, and the fact that that wife has stood by you along the way, there is nothing greater. Because I've seen too many cases as a professional person and as a friend to many, where the minute there is financial distress, people are gone. It is challenging. In fact, Sterling mentioned that Elaine was in the bank and positive things came out of that. But if you work in the bank and you cannot catch someone who is late on their loan, call the house and just say, is Philip there or is Robert there? And they say no, and say, would you like to leave a message? You say, no, I tell you what, tell him Scotiabank call. I guarantee when you walk in that house, is fire and brimstone, and the marriage is on descent afterwards. So finances, absolutely possible, necessary. Imagine the kids. The kids want to go on vacation. They see Philip's kids going to Disney World, but daddy can't do it. They see Philip's kids going to the mall every weekend, and you telling them it can't happen. So it is important. We know our limitations. If I only make $100 a week, I can't do some of those things, many of those things. But the reality is, in answer to the question, finances, as much as love is important, essential, but I'll tell you, if love is in the house, the marriage generally does not fail. If there are no finances in the house, you're in trouble. So absolutely important.
And Robert, and when there are frugal times, when there isn't much finances, how do we make things work and manage through difficult times?
Well, I'll tell you, going back to the early days, immediately after we got married, you would have put funds aside and everything else. We used to make the rounds as whose house we were having dinner and supper and everything else. So it's all about managing. And, last week we talked about managing finances and everything else, and I think that's critical. But I think what is also important is that you and your spouse talk about these things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what goals are set. Far too often we hear stories of, okay, my wife pays the phone bill, I pay the mortgage, the wife pays for the car loan, I pay the water bill. No, in my house, we pool everything. All the bills are paid from one account. When the kids were coming up, they knew exactly where things stood. We exposed them to banking at an early age. And there was one point, something we were doing, Linda reminded me the other day, we were shopping, and Georgette, they were in St. John's at the time, and she was a little concerned because she wanted to know if there was going to be any money left for her school fees, because she know that if the school fee is not paid, you got to stay away from your friends and from classes. And so it's important. It's so critical to a relationship that all the stakeholders need to be aware of what is going on and that we're all moving in the same direction. So we found that it's worked in our marriage these 40 years. And, I know before we got married, one of the excuses you might use for marriage is I don't have enough money. But if you think about it, when you are living apart, you got two sets of bills to pay. And when you're together, that becomes one bill. So, marriage is important in that you focus your attention and you decide how you're going to move. So yes, money is important, but once you manage it properly and you decide that, sometimes you have to do without. There are times when you gotta have peanut butter and bread or slam bam. As a belly full is a belly full. You can't be, I counsel persons on the job all the time. I can afford to buy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But these folks who are just starting out, that's where all their money is going. There's nothing for the future, so it's a matter of, like I say, exposure and advising folks on the way forward. So.
Yeah. So Andy, can we watch other people's pot? Well, the Joneses over there, Robert going on vacation, so we need to go too. How do we manage our monies without looking at another man's pot?
Well, let me say this. It is very bad practice to either try to keep up with the Joneses or to do what the Joneses do. Very early in our marriage, Sonia and I came to the agreement that we will do what the Gill family has to do in order to make our financial basis sound. And sometimes I must admit that I have all these grand ideas and these big plans. And also they look at me and tell me, show me the money. If you show me the money, I will go along with you.
Mm.
Don't show me the money, then no deal. But, you know, I think of a Sparrow who had a song says, no money, no love. But, you know, I did say that a good belly and sex is important. But Tony, and I agree with Tony here again, is that I've seen where lack of finances have really eroded some very sound marriages. And sometimes it doesn't always, lack of finances is that have eroded marriages is not always because of a lost job or something like it. It is just sometimes one of the spouses doing something that is not absolutely necessary for the marriage at the time. And then undue strain on the marriage. And once any strain comes into the marriage, whether it's finance, whether it's health, whatever it is, it can quickly erode all the good things that you have done in previous years. And I see sometimes just a bad decision in finances could cause some very serious ripple effects. So, you know, but I think sometimes married people find it a little shame sometimes to go and seek financial advice. And I think that sometimes with all the professional people and as a church family, sometimes we have all of this wealth of talent and knowledge around us. And we only wait to the 11th hour before we go trying to seek this advice. But I think that if we seek advice and we seek a way before things get dire, we could do a better job in our finances. I think at our church in particular, there are many sessions that some of the marriage couples have, which focus on finances as well and these things. And I think sometimes a lot of counseling sometimes focus on the preparation for marriage and tell you what God says. But sometimes it's good to hear what man says concerning the pitfalls in financial planning so that you don't become victim or fall victim to that.
Well, and how do we ride the wave of financial highs and lows? There are good times and there are bad times. How do we ride that wave to a successful marriage?
You know, when you tie in finances with marriage, it starts from the inception, from that dating process. The most intelligent couple, we're not intelligent. I'll say the most aware couple who's dating. Someone will raise that question of finance during those dates while you're dating. Okay, we're having a great time, party, and the music is good and everything else, the food is good. But at one point, as that relationship advances, there's going to be a need for a conversation about what you think about this, and it's going to relate to finances. Not that I'm a gold digger, because gold diggers, you got men and women, but it's just that it's a conversation that you must have. So what it does, it set the stage, it set a ground, a foundation for when this relationship advances past the wedding ceremony, that you're on a stable mental footing as to where we're going to go with the bills. Because a lot of times, if you leave that part out, when you let the bills come in later, then you're going to have a problem because you'll find out there is nothing for the bills, you know, because John has a different idea of it. He wants this single account. And Mary, like, my money is my money and your money is me and your money. So how do you balance that? You got to have this conversation. And when you have this conversation, it got to be straightforward and it got to be take off the mask because you're talking reality now. This is not fantasy, you know? So you had your days when you could fantasize and, you know, like, okay, I want $1 million before I get married. Get over it. It ain't going to happen. You're going to work for a salary. You're going to get a certain amount of money every week. And that according to your employment, according to your your vocation and according to your whatever you do in terms of your skill sets and what you're qualified to do, and that's your money level. But of course, some people get successful and they make money, and of course, it was not all about academics, but as you know, the rule of law is you go to school, you do something else, you make more money. But that conversation got to be had with your partner, and then what it does. And one thing I always I listen to people conversation, and I never could understand that how come why you didn't establish what we call a joint account. See, when you have a joint account, you get all people could be held more accountable rather than I mean, of course, our wives, our wives have leeway where okay, you can see some nice clothes coming in, some nice shoes coming in. We cut slacks, right? Okay, all right. I'm going to the tailor. I'm going to get me some suits made. Okay, we cut slacks, but there got to come a time when you talk about big ticket items, there got to be some collaboration, and when you don't do that, you're going to have a breakdown, and that's where the problem comes in. The big ticket items, you got to have and then you find that too, if finances start to dwindle, what you consider small ticket items like little luxuries you buy for yourself, you'll find that even is risky business according to the flow, the cash flow. But you got to be in sync as a team. You got to be a team. So you got a team as a lover, team as this is my financial partner, and we are coaching each other in this relationship in terms of our finances. You see, and then as you move on,
I like that.
Yeah, you see, as you move deeper into your relationships and you start to acquire bigger ticket items like a house, you're going to find that major decisions will have to be made. You talk about mortgages, you're talking about interest rates, and you're talking about longevity, right? And I can say this openly. And you talk about financial coaches. I can always remember, and I just reflect on this last week, And as a matter of fact, I was in my old neighborhood today. I rode to San Susie, and I was talking to my old neighbor, Mr. Lamb, and we were talking about some of the properties around there. Just today, I take a shortcut through there. And he said to me, it's been 20 years since I spoke to you. Just today, I stopped. He was in his yard, and I stopped. And he said, wow, it's been a long time. He says, I'm right here. He said, he pointed his finger at me, and he pointed at the property. And he said, that was a wise decision you made. And weeks ago, I was reflecting on that same decision Elaine and I made to sell that property and move somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And on the right side, I can call his name, Tony Allen, very wise banker. And he said, he told us as a young couple, cut your losses. Right now, move on. And we did that. And one of the wisest moves we made in our life. You see, you got to cut your losses.
So what I'm hearing here is that you sought wise counsel in difficult
because
situations,
the property
and made sure that you moved based on wise counsel.
The property for the panel, for the interest of this panel, the property was compromised because it was low lying. That was the lowest point in San Susie, and we got all the water. So after the big major flood, as a matter of fact, Elaine never went back in that house. She couldn't sleep there no more, and we never slept there another night after that. But what I'm saying is that you're going to be challenged as a couple, and the foundation you set with the finances, it's got to be the same as the love. The love is one thing. The financial have to have another footing. You see, and that footing have to be like a wise man built his house upon the stone. So you can't have this sand mentality, things slipping through the cracks. You have to be solid, and you have to bounce things off each other, and then you have to control that account. The account has to be controlled.
I'm hearing the importance of communicating. Of communicating. I have a question from the audience. Like I told you guys, you're evoking responses from the audience. So the question is, husbands have their own agenda, and likewise for a wife. What specific steps can be taken to ensure a singular purpose is made to achieve a common goal or target? When a wife has one agenda, husband has another. How do you have a common goal? Tony.
Look, this is the core of success, and it could be absolutely is the core of failure. So we just finished the section on finances. Mm-hmm. Separate and apart from the various steps to finances, there's a start. You want husband and wife to sit to a table and put everything not only in your respective checking accounts, but you want to come up with a budget. And so that's the start of a successful financial marriage. For success in every other aspect, it is communication. Same as it is for the budget, it is communication. So we must always start at the communication level. And I always believe there is no exception to it. So that's the first step that I would recommend for a successful marriage.
Okay, so we got a comment. This is an interesting session. The panelists are bringing a great deal of experience to the dialogue. And then the question came, what is the importance of understanding the emotional support versus physical support? Robert, you start with that. What is the importance of understanding the emotional support versus physical support?
I think it's critical. And this is where you need to be well read, and you need to have discussions on almost every possible topic. Nothing is off limits between husband and wife. And it's interesting because sharing is so important. And I remember, I early in life, I would do a lot of counseling, college days and everything else. And while it was based on my experience in the church and my knowledge of the Bible, I didn't consider it Christian counseling. But I soon appreciated that was what it was. And it wasn't until my renewal experience in the early 80s that there were some things I wasn't sharing. And Linda attended, this is Casio. Linda attended a women's weekend later on. And she came back and she said, now. So being knowledgeable, I think, is important because she realized that a part of the equation was having that conversation and discussing things. And she challenged me. And I think that's one of the things we need to do. We need to hold each other to account and challenge each other when we are not doing what is right. And she challenged me to discuss the things, because, a simple thing as there's something you don't like and you've told your significant other, your spouse, that you don't like it, and they continue to do it. And so the conversation stops. You just get vexed because you figure, I've told you before, I don't need to tell you again. But it's important at every time to remind folks, because like everything else, some things that are important to you may not be important to me. You may remember a kind gesture that I offered or a kind word I said, and because that's my nature, I thought nothing of it. But at the time you heard it, it meant a whole lot to you, and you continue to remind us. So same thing, when we're having challenges, we need to talk about it. And we need to express what our feelings are. I think what is also important is that you don't go to bed angry. Now that's a difficult one, but it's certainly something which, I'm still working on, but I'm it's a work in progress. So even after 40 years, plus the courting before that, I'm still working on it. So
it's a juggling act.
Oh yeah.
A juggling act. Another question from the floor. Without getting into too much details, no specific examples needed, can you please give advice regarding the difference between love versus need? Sometimes it can become blurred and mistake in judgment can happen. How do you decipher and discern the difference between love versus need? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I think it's instinct, instinct. And where the world is so full of trickery, someone could look at you and they could say, I love you. Mm-hmm. But that love is only extended as far as your pocketbook or the appearance of your pocketbook. But you know, it goes back to instinct, and it goes back to dialogue. So the most hidden agenda comes out in natural conversation. The most crafty person, or the most conceived crafty idea, the most crafty idea that was conceived by a man or a woman could be exposed simply by conversation, and what you call is like indeliberate conversation. So I'm having this conversation with you now, and then you forgot what you said yesterday. And you see, and you have to listen when people talk. Half the time we run into problems because we're not listening. You listen when people talk. So when you do, and you keep that in your mindset as to what was said, especially if they're going to be, if you are interested in this person in terms of a personal relationship, you have an obligation to listen to what they're saying for your own well-being. You see, and then the danger is, or the potential danger is like, okay, how much you have at your disposal. That's the reason why you'll find that somebody with a little, a little possessions, whatever that is, you know, you'll find that they're a little cautious with their emotions because they don't want their emotions to get up and down. You see, because most human being, the basic human need is to be loved. And everybody want to be loved for me. I don't want you to love me before what I can give you. You see, but we live in a society today, I can tell you, I don't know how the young fellas is going to make it, because if I was looking for a wife, I'll stay single. You know why? Because I'm so skeptical about everybody and I don't trust no one based on that. It seems like the world forgot about genuine love. Like when he was growing up, I just like you, man. I love you. And if you happen to have anything, that's yours. But hey, it's great. So in other words, the choice what you have, we can both play with it. But I love you. I love your mind. I love your personality. I love being around you, and add the physicalness of it. A lot of that is lost right now. And you know, and I always say when my daughters who are married, you know, and I feel good, like, okay, they found love. Because this thing out there, man, if you have to navigate these waters today, I tell you.
It's crazy out there, isn't it? And guess what?
Crazy out there. And guess what? And coronavirus didn't help. So we're talking about post, pre, whatever.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, the question is actually a very good one. And sometimes you could fuse the lines between them. The question of whether you are with someone because of love or because of need. And oftentimes we actually do run to financial need. That's the obvious one, because everybody has a financial need. Even billionaires have a financial need. It might not be real, but they have a financial need. But there are other forms of need as well. For example, someone could be with you because of emotional need, psychiatric need. They like this person for some reason or the other that is other than financial. I think it is important to evaluate that, because those kinds of need, even financial need, if they're only there for a financial need, it's like, have you ever met somebody with a yacht? There is no ultimate yacht. So what happens is, if you like this person for a 40-foot yacht, what happens when a 50-foot yacht comes along, or a 60-foot yacht comes along? You have to, love is so basic and so fundamental. And you know what wins me with my wife? My wife tells me that I am handsome. And then I go, perhaps a simple uplift that for that particular day, I might have been feeling the next way, not feeling good about myself, or may have gotten beaten up on the job. And she may have also said, you're my hero. My kids, when they tell me, Dad, you're the best hero in the world, that takes me through the stratosphere. But we have to identify, when we're talking about this topic tonight, marriage. am I getting married to this person because they have me for an emotional need, or do they love me and still have an emotional need? So when that need is satisfied, they're still in love with me. That is ultimately important for me.
So I got another one. And Andy, I can go at you with this one first, but all of you should tap in on this one. Now, you might need your dictionary. Question says, when is it right to decapitate, cut, incorporate, add, or resuscitate, revive the views or opinions of an interfering in-law? When do you decapitate, incorporate, or resuscitate the views of or opinions of an interfering in-law?
Well, Philip, if I heard you right, you said capitate,
Decapitate,
decapitate,
resuscitate, or incorporate the views, basically, of the interfering in-law.
Right. Well, let me say it this way, right? I never had that experience, so I can't really give an answer. My in-laws were very, very, very good to me. They were never meddling. They never interfered, right? In fact, even when I go to them to seek counsel, in some ways, they would say, but you know, I'm an in-law, I shouldn't be giving you counsel, right? But
So you're lucky then. So you're lucky, Andy. What about when there is the case? What's your advice if that were the case? What should they do?
What would I do? Now, I think that it's unfortunate that in some marriages, in-laws become very meddling. But if we go back to the marriage covenant though, where you say the two shall become one, forgetting your mother and your father, right? And cleaving to each other. That means that the in-laws will have to play second to whatever goes on in the marital home. Sometimes, because of person's nature, they find that very difficult to do. But I think that if the two married persons agree and they really hold their vows sacred and they really want to make their marriage work, they should be able to drown out the noise of any interfering in-laws. That's my take on it. My stab at it.
So we got to drown out the noise and make sure that the focus is in the house.
Yes, because sorry, but the thing is, you know, we asked the question earlier if family is important. Yes, family is important, but I still think at some point in time, the only third person in your marriage should be God, right? So if we operate on that,
we got to decipher. We got to decipher when to let outside in, but make sure that the focal point is God.
Is God, yes.
I got a little provocative question here, guys. It says, as a husband, how do you resist outside temptations in your marriage? How do you resist outside temptations in your marriage?
Well, I'll have a start with that. First off, I want to, just address the point about the decapitation and the resuscitation and everything else as well. You're talking about conflict, and you got several means of doing it. You either meet it head on or you avoid it. And I can ignore you to no end. So you put on the whole arm of God, you listen to what they say, and then you carry on smartly. That's, I mean, it annoys some people, but that's the way I meet the challenge. I don't take it on, In terms of the other question now, Remind me what it is again, please,
Yeah,
Phil.
yeah. The question was, how do you resist outside
Oh,
forces
outside
entering the
forces.
marriage?
Well, you need my particular take. You know, when you tell a lie, and you have to tell a lie to cover up a lie and another lie, it's cheaper to tell the truth. And to avoid having to deal with that, I think just thinking about what the outcome will be allows you just to walk away sometime. It's not saying that the temptation won't come,
Mhm.
but certainly
Real
when
talk.
you think of what the ramifications of yielding to that temptation are, you go the other way. And I'm thankful that I've been blessed that I continue to walk that way. So,
Yeah. Phil, I think we have to be mindful that temptation is very real,
Mhm.
but it's how we protect ourselves. But I want to go back as well as Bob did to this decapitate, resuscitate.
Uh-huh.
You take on your wife's family because
Yes.
she is a reflection of them, the value system, as I said earlier. But if it causes a negative in your relationship, and I'm speaking for me, it's time to decapitate. Now, that brings challenges to a relationship simply because you can't cut her off from her family. But there has to be some balance to contain that, because if you don't, it's going to get in your relationship every time. Now, on the issue of outside temptation, one has to appreciate that there are several levels of temptation. So if somebody's interfering with your marriage, that's a problem. You have to avoid that, especially if the love is still in the home. That's the first issue. But when we look at other temptations, suppose I'm sitting with Anglican churchmen and we're in a restaurant and a lady passes who looks quite attractive. Is that temptation? Some people count it as a temptation. All right. So that's just looking, for example. I know recently my wife and I were sitting down. I tell this story, and I was sitting with two of my sons, and a lady, and presently I'm in Florida, and so Florida wear summer clothes, etc. And you have to develop humor in your relationship. All right. But I'm talking about a very tiny, tiny example of temptation. So the lady walks by. So my sons and I looked at her and said, "Ooh." So when I turned, I was looking at Candace. And Candace say, "Huh?" I said, "Candace, you see the brains on that woman? That is the most significant brains I have ever seen. She has got to be an A student." So you have to make it, this is not war, all right? This is you and your mate. Sometimes you have to crack jokes. Sometimes in being each other's best friend. Man, a pretty lady passes. Guess what? When a handsome, good-looking fella passes, they look to you know.
Yeah.
But that's the friendship of the relationship. They look too. But we're talking about teeny beeny with things. The others, when the temptation is huge, my friend, you need to go and get some help. Whether it's the church, prayers, or whatever, you need to get some help.
Phil, host, I just want to say something in response to what Tony just said, right? Temptations come in all forms, shapes, sizes, and everything.
Mhm.
And as married, we are not immune from temptation, right? We could be all prayed up and all sanctified and everything, right? And temptation will still find its way. But I just want to share a little joke with you that happened early in my marriage, Tony. So I am a little bit ahead of you. I remember when I first, I don't even think I was married yet, right? I was probably very early married. We were driving down Bay Street one day, Sonia and I saw what I considered a fine looking young lady.
Mhm.
My head turned I can't remember if it's the right or left, but my head turned. All I find was a knock on my leg. You can look, but you don't have to stare, right? So, and the thing is now, up to this day, when I see somebody that is fine looking, I will look to Sonia and tell Sonia, "You see that lady? You see that?" So at least we can have some interaction, right? You know, and some banter to let her be aware that, you know, there are things out there that would attract us, but my focus is still you, right? And I think that if we realize that as married men, and the thing is, the Bible tells us, shun the very appearance of evil. So if we're in the company of ACM brothers and we see somebody and, or we are with our family and we see somebody, that doesn't mean that we are automatically going to go home with that person. We can acknowledge that as a fine looking person with a lot of brains, according to Tony, even you know, if they have all the other curves and features. But the reality is, though, is to make sure that you keep yourself, you know, as best as you can from those.
I want to reverse this a little bit,
yes.
You know, because what if the temptation is coming from the other end because they're attracted to you? You know, there's an old adage that says, if you're the only person that, if you are the only person that your wife looks at, or the only person that you look at, meaning that only you like your wife and only her likes you. How do you resist the temptation from that end when it's coming at you?
Right.
Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead, Tony, sorry.
How do you resist the temptation? If somebody finds you attractive,
yes,
there's still barriers. They could look at you, as I indicated earlier. Even wives look at good-looking fellas walking by. I can't stop somebody who might be drawn to me. Maybe I remind them of their father. Maybe I remind them of their favorite brother. In the way of my own sisters, they like men who remind them of Tony and Andy. So people are going to be drawn to you. It's where do you draw the line, and not take that any further than just attraction. I don't think, again, I'm simplifying it because we don't have that much time, and this is the other panelists, but people will always be drawn to you.
I agree with both of you there, you know. The thing is too that, like you say, you draw a line because you can have conversation on a lot of general things, but when they start to go down a particular path, then you either change the subject or change your position. You know, that's how it is, you see. So, but temptations will come, and the attractions will be there.
And I love humor to any situation. If somebody approached me and said they like me, I say that's fine. But my wife just asked me if I license a gun yet. So you know,
but you know, yes, Mr. Philip, people will be attracted to us, right? Just as how men are attracted to nice-looking young ladies, and our wives are attracted to other handsome guys. But the point is that one thing that I try to do, and I think that what a woman sees in me is my wife's work on me. You know,
I like that. I like that.
And the thing is, once I am always conscious of that, right? I am okay. So my thing about it is that whenever somebody's attracted to me, my first word is, if she come and say, nice shirt, I say, my wife pick it out. If she say, you look good today, are you well coordinated? My wife chose the colors, right? You know,
so guys,
so the point is that you almost actually putting in some self-imposing barriers. Now, sometimes some people still jump the fence, and that's when you have to show more resistance. But the point is, you have to know the barriers that, you know, or you have to know the parameters that how far you can go with that.
Yeah.
I have some practical solutions there, Andy. Guys, believe it or not, we've been going for 2 hours in this discussion, and we could go on, but I need to get your final thoughts. If we could wrap that up in a minute or so, because we're over the time. But can you give us your final thoughts? Let's start with you, Sterling. Any advice, any information you want to impart to our viewing audience? Sterling?
I find that staying with the topic of marriage and relationships, I find that for the health of marriages today, especially the climate that we are in right now, a lot of patience, a lot of care, and that means going back to basics and how you feel about your spouse. That's going to play a very vital role as to how we navigate our current love life and in our marriage life for those who are, because of the strain now that was put on the world and put on your household. It could manifest itself in a way where you'll find that on any given day something could be challenged, and that could be in the form of something emotional. God forbid the physical of it, because right now with the crisis center, they talk about the rise in physical violence, mostly against women in this pandemic. But I think it goes back to how you really feel about your wife, and you're talking about genuine love. And if you do something wrong, if something don't nag you, if you say or do something wrong, if that little voice inside didn't nag you and say you better apologize or make you feel bad, then you have a real problem, because you are guided by that, and because of that basic love. You don't tell. Love is something. It's inside of you, and if it's not there, you can't buy that. That have to be inside of you, and that love what you have for that woman, if it's not there, you cannot live with her. So I'll say, people, dig deeper, find your comfort zones, and that's your wife. Make the best out of that. That's your husband. You make the best out of that, and you find the good. Even if something is lost, if there's a spark that's gone, rekindle that. And I had a note. I had a note that I wrote down yesterday. And Robert, you took the word right out of your mouth when you said that your son have date nights. And my note is, I had this written down from 2 days ago. Date your wife. Take your wife out on a date. Whenever we could do it, do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, final thoughts and words to wrap up our session?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to the ACM for allowing me to share with the audience here this evening. But I want to say this, is that the thoughts I shared this evening was based on somebody's, I think it was the same where it says that we are sitting on the shade of somebody's tree that planted. All right, there were a lot of persons that empowered me into my marriage. And I trust and pray that the life I live now as a married person, that I would be a good husband, a good protector, first of all, a good priest, a good provider, and a good protector. And at some point in time, people could now learn and glean from me and sit underneath the tree of example that I set for persons, so that my legacy when I'm gone would be where persons found me to be a fit and faithful priest, provider, and protector in God's family. That's my final thoughts.
Robert Bartlett, sum up the night.
Well, the role of the husband as in a Christian home as priest, protector, and provider. I think the terms are synonymous, and some of the characteristics and roles overlap. And I think we are called to lead by example. It's been said that for some people, the only book they read will be what they see in you. And so if we set a proper example for our children and for the wider community, the world would be a better place. So those are my final comments.
And now to you, Tony.
I agree with Robert. I mean, those points are very essential, and that's the topic for tonight. But I'll drill it down to a more practical, and not discounting anything that was said, but I look at the relationships, not just my own, but how I think people might want to look at it. My best friend is my wife. My wife continues to tell me repeatedly that I am her best friend. I tell you, when I said earlier, she said that I was handsome, I took her line of vision to be something exemplary. We opened with a song here, You're Still the One. That's a special song to my wife and I. I didn't know that song was going to be played here tonight. We were driving up to Jacksonville the other day, and we videoed ourselves recording that song, singing that song. We still look at it. I believe she has put it on the YouTube. I think there are 7 views, her 3 sisters and my 4 sisters. So we on a roll now. We're going to the big. But the reality is you have to bring excitement to a relationship. That's one, whether it's money, whether it's sex, whatever it is. I get a lot of thrills, my wife and I, when we travel. We love traveling. But you know, sometimes you have to get out of the house. And every time we travel, especially if we're checking into a hotel, it's like you're bringing your girlfriend to the hotel. There is a different level of appreciation. And I'll close with this as you look at your relationship, whether you have been married for 40 years or a day. Ask yourself, women on this chat as well, but I ask them all the time. Women to men and men to women, I ask. When was the last time he kissed you like the first time? Tell me how he answers that question and what you think about it. When was the last time he kissed you like the first time? And Phil, on that note, I'll end.
You guys, panelists, you've been awesome tonight. Our viewing audience, you have been listening to over 150 years experience in marriage, and the insight, the information, the thought-provoking suggestions and statements made have made us all enriched, look at our own marriages, and those who are looking into the possibility of getting married. There's hope, there's insight, there is a belief that we can make our marriages as successful as these guys. I end with a quote to those who are seeking to enter into this most honorable arena by Chris Jamie. To say that one waits a lifetime for his soulmate to come around is a paradox. People eventually get sick of waiting. Take a chance on someone, and by the art of commitment, become soulmates, which takes a lifetime to perfect. We're all in the process of perfecting our soulmates in this lifetime journey of marriage. I thank you all, and I turn back over to our president, Mr. C.J. McKenzie.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, everybody. Listen, I must commend these distinguished panelists that we had tonight that had such the most challenging and also exciting topic on the role of the husband in the Christian home. There were so many nuggets and lessons learned from the panel discussion this evening, just so many. I take Sterling Cleare's final farewell when he mentioned to keep dating, never stop dating your spouse. I remember Andy Gill mentioning by taking after great examples ahead of you. Always remember those who embedded all their standards and principles in you. Robert Bartlett, he opened and closed, reminding us that God is our ultimate protector, our priest and provider, and men must always strive to be like him. And also interesting, Tony's opening comment and closing comment all involve kissing. So I only could imagine how many kisses will be going on tonight after a good job well done. But I want to thank you, gentlemen, for having a very lively and entertaining and informative panel discussion. We could not find 4 other gentlemen better than you guys inside our ministry to take care of this tough topic. I also want to say special thanks to our hosts for working hard these last 3 weeks plus for putting on a dynamic discussion for us. Mr. Philip Gray,
Hey.
you've been awesome once again, bringing it home. Thank you very much.
Great job, bro.
I also must commend also our planning committee and technical team in the man of Mr. Oliver Lynch. Lynch, you've been working hard also, and we've finally completed all 3 of our panel discussions. Good job, Oliver. This event would not be successful without the excitement, the thrill, the questions from our viewing audience. I must thank all of our audience for tuning in. We've had audience who have been here from the very first panel discussion all the way to now. I must thank you very much for spending time out of your schedule this evening to come and support this particular event. Special thanks also to our members of our own branch, Holy Cross ACM, and also the ACM Council at large. We've had our past president, Dwight Gibson, on the call, as well as our current president, Mr. Javon Moss. We thank you for your support. And we thank everybody for spending time with us this evening. I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I thank you for supporting Holy Cross ACM series of panel discussions. And of course, I would now like to ask Mr. Antoine Coakley to please end the night in prayer for us.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for this opportunity to share. We ask your blessing with us as we close our eyes and rest. We ask your blessing upon families, upon households. We ask your blessing upon those who share in this panel discussion. May their marriage continue to blossom and may they continue to be fruitful until you call them. Now, Lord, the shade lengthens and the busy with a such, and the field of life is over our work is done. Grant us safe lodging, holy rest, and the peace of the last. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Night, you all.
Good night.
Till